I just wanna have peace. Pay for the bill, let them take my car, never see the receipt. Good health, we prize, but everybody around prosperity.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the LivBtr Podcast. This is your host, Jay Siano, and this is the show for people trying to optimize every area of their life. Let's go.
I just wanna have peace.
All right, guys, so I am super excited for today's guest, a homie, a client of Sabre. Today we have the CEO and co-founder at Open, Raed Khawaja. Raed has an amazing background working for software companies, many other very large companies. He has a degree in computer science from Stanford University. We're going to talk about all the things, just living better today than we were yesterday. Let's kick it in with Raed Khawaja. Welcome to the show.
Very happy to be here, Jay.
I'm happy to have you, man.
Yeah. An excuse to spend time together. That's how
Exactly. I wish it was in person, but soon enough. So for the listeners, give a little background. I think I'm going to learn some stuff about you as a result of this, which is exciting. But give a little background on yourself and how you got to Open and the concept. But start from the top.
The very top.
The very top.
I was born in Rush Hospital in Chicago, Illinois, to a wonderful family, one sister and two wonderful parents. And yeah, I grew up with abundance. I wasn't a very lavish upbringing, but I was never left wanting for anything either. And there were always hugs to go around. So I feel very lucky in that way. I guess also notably, if we're starting from the top, I'm ethnically Pakistani. Both my parents are Kashmiri and Pakistani. And so my mom felt it was very important that I had some intimacy with the Madri Zuban, or the mother tongue. And so I was cutting a lot of laps over the summers back to Pakistan, which, has been kind of invaluable in how I see the world. From a very young age, I was seeing life from a very different perspective than that kind of, middle class West suburban upbringing that I got in Chicago, Illinois. So I feel really lucky in that way as well. But yeah, I grew up playing all the sports, distracted by all the things. I think curious like everyone, kind of putzing about with ideas of who I wanted to be, what I wanted to be. And I think like a lot of people couldn't really answer it right away. So started to play a very long game of process of elimination. And, I guess my earliest memory was we had a job shadowing day that was designed by the high school or the junior high. I was still pretty young. And I went and shadowed my uncle, who's a ICU doctor, a pulmonologist in specialty. And a very young woman that day came in and died upon landing.
Wow.
It was pretty devastating. But yeah, pretty clarifying to me too that wasn't what I wanted to try to work.
Did you go into that experience maybe, not knowing if that was something you would consider in life, and then as a result of that experience, like, no, this is not for me.
This isn't it. This is very honorable. But very devastating. But yeah, no, I think that's right. I think growing up a South Asian American, first generation immigrant, there's a decent bit of preloaded software, if you will, that being a physician or a lawyer or some sort of, something that would require more school and more letters at the end of your name. Should be considered before anything else. But more kind of, but telling that story to represent kind of, I, like many others, maybe everyone, having these deep questions early on, like, okay, what is it that I'm going to spend my life on, working on? And was, pretty passionate person. So it really did have that weight. Like, what is it going to be?
Well,
So I meandered
selfless, I
about.
kind of feel you're also a lot. I think you question a lot more than most, right? Like you're very analytical and thoughtful, which is a great thing, I think. I think when we spend time together, we ask a lot of questions. We're always like seeking just seeking answers to things that are on our mind, and I think you explore those things. So I'm not surprised to hear that you were doing that at a young age.
Yeah, and continued on, in college. So the more of the meandering was everything from um, working on I was like 18, 19 years old and helping a friend start a men's skincare line from scratch.
That's cool.
He was a bit older, yeah. He went on to keep working on it. Did some financy things, banking, looked up, said, that's not the job. I don't want that job, 20, 30 years from now. Again, nothing wrong with it. Just didn't feel the heartbeat coming back on it. Got out of college, worked for huge companies, CPG, retail mostly.
You didn't mention where you went to college.
Oh, I went to DePaul in Chicago, Illinois.
There you
Studied
go.
econ.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah, it was a rich experience. I didn't spend a lot of time at the university, frankly, and now that I've heard about all these people who dropped out and had such wildly successful careers ahead of them, I'm like, I was just grinding, to be honest. The last year for sure, I was just doing it because I felt like I had to do it. But pretty much 2 years in, I was like, okay. I was working a lot. I wanted to get out there in the world. I wanted to start doing the things. And had this tremendous opportunity with PepsiCo out of college where it was one of those rotation programs, and you get, kind of broad exposure to different parts of the organization, and they move you around too. So did that, lived all over the place, Atlanta, Miami, lived in Northwest Arkansas for just under 12 months, maybe
That
10 months.
had to be interesting.
Yeah.
Different.
It was awesome, frankly.
Yeah.
The job was more analyst oriented, and you support, the Walmart does an amazing job of this. They have incredible relationships with their supplier community. And so there's a decent bit of talent sharing that happens. And so I was at the intersection of, two behemoth businesses, operating global businesses. And
Were you in Bentonville then?
I was in Bentonville.
Yeah. That's a really interesting place.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
And truly just like a heart of gold people, and yeah, just have many fond memories of the people, but also the work. As a certified nerd, having your hands on that much data at once between all those companies, and I was really in the weeds of it. And
what would you say was one of the biggest things that landed on your brain as a result of that experience that you've carried forward that really shaped how you look at business as a result of that experience?
Yeah, I think tactically I would answer, because I was a spreadsheet jockey at the time. Tactically, developed a knack for looking at the data and developing a hypothesis early on what is actually worth spending time on. I remember presenting things to work on to senior leaders, and they're like, well, that's just going to be, there's maybe $5-10 million of upside there.
It's not really moving the needle.
We do like 10 billion in net revenue here on this business. So so I think I developed a real good kind of fluency with data, and then thinking through, how to invest time in things that can really make a big impact.
At that point in your life, were you focused on living a healthy lifestyle and overall wellness, or were you just so stuck, looking at numbers, crunching numbers all day that you were maybe not so healthy?
No, I had the Aquafina in every meeting. That's Pepsi's water.
Sure.
I was hitting the gym pretty hard. I was hiking. I was cycling. I like that we're really pinpointing in that moment in time in
Yeah.
Arkansas in particular. Um, but yeah, I was just living in Miami the year before, which is a huge fitness culture. So I was riding off the waves of that, really. But no,
Cool.
I was an athlete growing up, and I was still in that. And that there was some dissonance for what it's worth, and um, in terms of kind of what the product portfolio was that I was working around, and maybe what I was consuming every day. But
Yeah.
again, just worked with a ton of great people, and a lot of people who invested a lot in me and spent extra time very selflessly, because I was kind of like that annoying kid coming to your desk every couple hours and asking something that maybe I could have figured out if I spent a couple hours more on it myself, but got a lot of help. But to answer on the other side, maybe more the macro of what I learned there, and really through all of those experiences, because I kept working for like Walmart, Amazon, the PepsiCos of the world for just a little bit more. And it really was around just seeing brand and distribution at play. There were, there weren't, it wasn't all tailwinds when it came to consumer preferences, and some of the portfolios I was engaging with. But the brands I was working with, PepsiCo alone, I think, has over $23 billion brands on a multinational level.
It's crazy.
And so just incredible brand equity and awareness and investment that's been made, for generations now. So seeing that be combined with powerful distribution networks and supply chain, where it's truly ubiquitous. I think that, the whole experience of working across all those places really opened my eyes to how powerful those two things can be together. Okay, if you make it widely accessible and you develop an incredible brand,
Yeah.
that can speak to not a niche, not just the cool kids, but to the
masses.
The masses.
Yeah.
Then you can really push palettes. You can really push product. You can really push ideas. You can really push culture.
So where did you go from there? What was the next season for you?
The next season was it was batting between New York or San Francisco for the next role. Big CPG and retail right around then was not discovering the internet. I wouldn't put it in those hardship terms, but just to geek out on kind of CPG for a second. There was like the first wave of food and beverage online and really grocery home delivery, and that was like early 2000s. There's things like web vans and things like that. I don't know if you remember all that.
I do, yeah, for sure.
There was an honest attempt, and
yeah. In New York City, we had Urban Fetch, which was like one of the yeah.
So it was just one of those timing things.
Sure.
That wasn't the cycle. I was there for the second cycle when all the big dogs were really committed to it as well. And so, the really sophisticated players in the space, they were talking about not, hey, what is the less sophisticated players were saying, what proportion of this business will be e-commerce? And let me proportionally assign resources to build out an e-commerce channel. And then the really sophisticated players were seeing this as another way to meet the consumer where they're at in their journey. And I was kind of at the intersection of that becoming. So, tens of thousands, I don't know, probably more items came online, and those items started being delivered at home, and those items started to be marketed for the first time really in jest on banner ads and attribution driven performance marketing. So that was kind of the next chapter. So move to the Bay Area,
like CPC, cost per click.
all that
CPM, all that fun stuff. Yeah.
all that fun stuff. Yeah, and it was still being defined. Really, it was,
Yeah.
and even if it was defined, it was the Wild West. Everyone was defining it in their own way. So
Totally.
a big part of my job was to get a lot of that stuff online, and then suss out kind of foundationally how we're going to market this, and what are the right way, what are the most powerful ways to do that. So moved to San Francisco to work more intimately on that. Walmart had an office out there, and PepsiCo was standing one up. So so that's it. And then I spent
So
some
now
time
you're
doing
dipping into Silicon Valley
yes,
head first.
head first, and you know grew up on consumer electronics. I was kind of, and grew up with my dad coming home with his ThinkPad in the mid 90s. And um, so definitely, I'm not the iPad generation, but I'm definitely the PC generation. And so was always having my own consumer relationship with it. But here was this opportunity, and I was really excited. As in everything I just said in that next phase, it was about coming online, and it was
Yeah.
finally kind of engaging with technology in a way. And so I was really excited to endeavor in that, and excited to land in the Bay Area. And it's funny you talked to, well, maybe not now. I don't think anyone's saying this is San Francisco's heyday right now, but there's definitely been a couple waves of, oh, that was the heyday in the Bay Area. I felt like I lived out one of those heydays. It was just such an exciting time. It was this kind of post 2008, banking and consulting as your obvious, if you're a highly pedigreed, accomplished student coming out of college, it seemed like two obvious things to do. It was like banking or consulting. Maybe there's a couple other, at least in the business side. And tech started to be a real option. And so the density of bright minds, and
Sure.
somebody who just loves being the dumbest person in the room. It was exciting to land in San Francisco around, I don't know, probably 2015 or 20. And
Crazy stuff going on at that time in the space. It had to be
oh
insane.
man, yeah, and venture capital. More and more funds were being raised, and the talent was there, and it was fun. And there were parties. It was exciting. It was a
Yeah.
fun time in San Francisco. So I was there, and I eventually pulled the parachute, and stopped going down the path of the kind of big company route, and thought I was going to start a company. Right then, went into a lot of fun things, a lot of kind of do good ideas. And then met a gentleman by the name of Brad Oberwager, and he was working on connecting a gig labor marketplace to CPG and retail. And I thought that, oh, this could be really cool. At this point, I had realized I wanted to start a company. And at this point, I also had this, how would I describe it? Kind of caving in pressure of realizing that I would probably be the CEO. See, the first part, it wasn't, there was a whole phase where I wanted to start a company, but I didn't really know what role I would play, and didn't really care. It was more about starting something from scratch. And on this,
but you didn't necessarily see yourself like at the helm of the, being the CEO per se of the company that you were starting.
Right. It really genuinely wasn't that for some time, but on this meandering journey I just took us all through, you start to not only do the process of elimination of what it is you want to work on, but you start to get to know yourself a little bit, and
Sure.
You start to see where you've been valuable along the way, and you start to pattern match and start to understand what different roles do. Eventually I had this caving in. I literally remember, I don't remember the day or the time or anything like that, or where I was, but I remember the feeling of sinking in, like, oh shit, I think you might need to do that one job, the worst job of them all. And And so, Brad had started a few companies at this point and had some pretty amazing success. And so I was pretty excited. I was going to leverage this domain knowledge that I had coming from this world, work on, a venture-backed thing, and work for someone who had done this role multiple times. And so it's kind of a dream role and backed me away from starting something then.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that it happened that way, because those 2 years that I spent working on Jive, working for Brad, working with that team, Sam, Cammy, James, all them there, it was, I learned a lot on on someone else's dime. Sorry, Brad.
Sure.
But yeah, so that kind of takes us to
And was that was that a startup that you joined, and so you basically were there for the first 2 years that the company existed?
Yeah, they had been, the founders had been working on it, but yeah, I was one of the first hires.
Yeah,
essentially,
which I would imagine is pretty good experience too when your next season is actually starting your own company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, looking back, I was beating myself up about it and felt like I was making another excuse to not finally make the plunge, but
procrastinating and like not wanting to again maybe accept the responsibility that you knew you were destined for.
Right. I mean, at 19, as I said, I was working on something with a buddy, and we hooked up something from the lab, literally, developed a brand, developed hair care and skincare products.
Does that company still exist?
It does, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's called
Interesting.
Kyoku for Men.
Cool.
So that was happening, but at the same time, who knows? I had a ton of fun along the way. I met incredible people. I learned. I did my walkabouts too. I got hard skilled and trained in things that maybe I wouldn't have if I was out there just, trying to figure it out. And so I'm sure there's many permutations that would have been ones that I would have been happy with, and this is one of them for sure.
Where does that lead us?
It leads us to 2018, San Francisco, and it's time. No longer at Jive, and I want to work on something. I think the journal entries were something like, leverage there was two of them profoundly. It was what was it? Basically something along the lines of, find your unfair advantages and leverage them.
Okay.
And then the second one was, and do that for putting out something good in the world. And it was really that simple. And I gave myself a lot of space to figure it out. I had been a lifelong meditator in a way, and a long time meditator in the way that I do it now. And I had pretty good skills of being able to, kind of observe the situation and sit back and see myself in that way. And what I observed in myself is that I had spent at this point like 10 years, and if you count some of that early stuff, even longer, working on things, so pitted, so like curious and driven and ambitious and kind of heads down, and just realized I needed to unwind a little bit if I was going to think with a truly open mind about what it is that I wanted to do next and what that was. And at some point realize, it was going to be top down or bottoms up. Top down would be, hey, I'm going to find this market opportunity. I'm going to, McKinsey the fuck out of it, do a hardcore case study energy and evaluate if it's a good business opportunity. And then I'm going to wield my unfair advantages against it. And even saying that out loud, you can kind of hear how that played out in my head at the time. And, again, and this is something, I try to share as much as I can, because it was from this space of abundance. It was from this space of gratitude for the situation I was in. It was just from this space of awareness of how lucky I had been along the way. this space of awareness that I'm sitting in 2015 or whatever it was at this point. Oh, I guess 2018 now, in
Yeah.
San Francisco, in a heyday for sure. And, it's from that space that we get to imagine kind of the wildest possibilities and the purest ones, I think, or at least that's an idea I want to put forward. And so I went bottoms up. I was like, hey, now I'm not going to, we'll see, kind of the market opportunity, but first we're going to start from here. And the second thing I wrote down is goodness, and bring goodness into the world. Okay, what is goodness to me? Like what does that actually even mean? And to me personally, and if at this point I'd realized I wasn't going to be the guy that launched the next great B2B email software company. I knew it was going to be consumer driven. I knew it was going to be human driven. So it had to come from me. And that was something that I had to embrace, but it was kind of this conscious process and effort and experience that I'm purposely dilating here, because I've seen time and again, and I know probably a lot of your listeners are folks that are in the same seat as me or about to be. And a lot of my friends who have started companies they kind of grapple with this phase, especially.
For sure.
Like how much of it needs to be me and how much of it needs to be validated by the market, and how, all these kind of more abstract questions.
So once you start stripping away, trying to focus on, like, not be distracted from maybe previous experiences, and really taking this more holistic approach to trying to bring something to the world that is very much, differentiated, unique, a part of yourself. Like, how do you start developing the idea from the bottom up?
Yeah, the idea came a little bit more, it's iterative, is how it's really answered the question. I think a lot of the ways ideas are sold to people is sitting under a tree and an apple falling on someone's head. But I think it's way more iterative than that. And even if you tried to pinpoint, there it was, that was the idea, that's when it came.
Yeah. No, of course, you have to kind of, it's more momentum and iteration along the way, right? So you set out, you're like, okay, this is what I'm doing, like in the most initial stage, right?
Yeah.
Which looks very different than the finished product.
Correct. And for me, it was this curiosity around meditation itself.
Yeah.
And realizing that I had gifted dozens, if not more, actually, I'm kind of holding back there, of Headspace and Calm subscriptions.
Sure. Yeah.
Hey, download this app. Here, this one's free. And time and time again, my friends or people who I just met, or, literally anyone who would ask me why I was just sitting there with my eyes closed, just time and again, people didn't stick with it.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't any one of those products themselves to blame for what it's worth. I had even used some of those and leaned on them. So it wasn't like this app is not satisfying. It was even the initial inclination. It was actually this observation of, wow, this thing has, this singular modality, this meditation thing has been so life-changing. And I've seen maybe 1% of the people I recommend it to actually stick with it. Why is that? And so that's really kind of the seed that was maybe like the beginning point, if you will.
Yeah.
And there was all these initial iterations of basically designing an experience that would be maybe more engaging, or something that people might walk away from their first experience with X, because that's really like all we have. And
yeah,
a lot of other products, that's kind of all they have, right? Like you unscrew the top on a new soda beverage and you take a sip. If it's not good, you don't come back, right?
Right.
But there's all these heady reasons why philosophically everything I just described is not the right pursuit for meditation. And those really dogmatic and mindful tradition would say, oh, even at your starting point, like, I disagree with the premise, right? But it was with great empathy for the user that I wanted to design something that people felt good after their first experience. And so the initial strikes were things like, I grew up in a religious household. I grew up Muslim, grew up praying. That was our form of meditation. And it's like every bit of mantra meditation. And my examples of it early on, the deepest experiences I had with prayer was going to the mosque and doing it with many, many other people who were there with the same intention.
Sure.
And doing it in a beautiful, awe-inspiring space. And so my initial hacks at it were just that. I said, well, maybe the problem is that people are out doing this isolated alone on an app. And maybe what I need to do is just get everyone together and get us in a beautiful space and then, hit and ran that a couple times. And luckily I had a decent bit of social capital at the time, so it filled up a couple rooms, but you could tell that people wouldn't be back on their own volition. So I started playing with other techniques and modalities that I knew were more either engaging or immediate, things that throttle your nervous system pretty directly, like breath work, and things that address your brainwave state very directly, like sound and overtone emitting instruments. Started playing with music and curation of music because I was DJing at the time with my friend, shout out Ariel. And I was doing breath retentions, and anyway, just started to do the becomings of what became our first class, which is called Breath and Sound, and we still teach it here in Venice at our first location. So started running pop-ups, started teaching the classes myself, thanks to my co-founder, Peter Sang. He's like, look, if we really want to design this thing, he joined after a couple iterations of this, and he's like, if you really want to turbo boost it, he's first engineer of DoorDash, by the way.
Wow.
And investor at SV Angel for a while, so he'd seen like 10,000 companies while he was there. And so he's like, hey man, we got to start teaching these classes if we want to design it faster. So we started doing that, and we sold out pretty quickly. We started just selling them all out. And
what was the time frame of that, would you say? 2019.
And I skipped over this whole walkabout I did in 2018, where I was going out and researching the landscape. I had been a consumer of all these things and practitioner for at that point for a decade in these modalities, and then grew up with a more of a spiritual context to it. But I spent like a good year investing in trainings and retreats and stuff that I wasn't even necessarily actually interested in doing for
R&D, understanding what's out there.
What are people being met with? How is this being communicated? How is this being positioned? So did that, and then we started running these pop-ups, and it really was like an experiential lab, if you will. And eventually started bringing other teachers on in that environment, and ran over 100 of them at least, and sold them all out. Ran big experiences, 300-person experiences at the planetarium. And then, and we kind of, what we cultivated through that and all those repetitions. And
now it's interesting because I have to ask, because, being in the space that I'm in, and, always looking for the next new and exciting thing, right? And focusing primarily in the healthy lifestyle space and wellness. I was in like, I feel like it was like 2017, 2018, where like Gary Vaynerchuk is talking about like meditation and mindfulness is like the next
Right.
frontier. And he kept kind of like saying that stuff. I'm always interested in listening. I don't really listen to Gary much today, but in that time frame, I was listening to him, and he was always talking about meditation and mindfulness and just how important it is, and mental health and things of that nature. And, coming through like a real spike in boutique fitness, personally being in that space, and, all of the bigger, more well-known concepts just growing like wildfire. I kind of, through listening to Gary and watching what's going on, everybody's talking about meditation, but people like myself at that time are making excuses as to why we don't meditate.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
Like, it's just, but I'm like, I can't quiet my mind. I'm so busy. That was around the time I had the first float tank experiences,
Nice.
like just getting into, into that type of stuff, testing that stuff out. And then my first experience really was Headspace, just kind of sitting there and guided meditations. And, so were you here when you were doing that, are paying close attention to, like, I don't want to call it a trend, but, let's say like people kind of, you have the benefit of being in California where it's like the wellness capital of the world, so what's going on like in the inner circles in California at the time that you're doing this stuff? Like, what do you know what I mean? Like, are there other people you're meeting that are like, also trying to do similar things? And is that how you're, really iterating those early stage ideas and research?
Sure. Yeah. I think for me, again, it was, I'll address it in two ways. One, just for me personally, and that's what I was saying when I was talking about that top down or bottom up approach.
Right. Exactly.
The bottom up approach for me was less about trends and more about, and if I'm embracing things that I'm really personally drawn to, it's things that are classic, things that are generational, things that are iconic, and everlasting.
Yeah.
And when I use those terms, I'm reminded that, meditation, though has gained popularity, and thanks to, incumbents like Calm and Headspace, like the App Store drops around 2010, I forget exactly, and right around then, both of those apps are there, and unfortunately, they are timed with mental health in disarray. Really, right? It's mental health disorders rising for the last decade, more than the last decade, at pretty absurd rates.
But less people like feeling comfortable talking about it then.
Exactly. And I think for even in the way that you described it, I was similar in re-engaging with the practice in my early 20s, less in a spiritual context, less in a I'm stressed or anything like that, but I was this young, ambitious, anything I can do to improve my performance. And that was my gateway into what I realized was, a much broader conversation I could have with the relationship between my mind and my body. But all that comes later. But yeah, I guess what I would, personally, I wasn't out there seeking the next trend.
Yeah.
Because that would have been the top down thing.
Totally.
The bottom up thing was to find hey, I could work on whatever I'm about to endeavor for 10 years and have a commercial failure, and I still would have been proud about what I put out there in the world. I would have been having fun along the way. So that was kind of where I was interested. It was
very purpose and passion driven. You weren't trying to like hack it together to,
Correct.
Yeah.
And just and part of that was because I was drawn to brands too.
Yeah.
And so, when you're building a brand, you're not going out there and trying to hit some arbitrage necessarily. You're trying to think about something. You're designing something that, people are going to have.
You're almost an artist, right? Like, and you very much are. You are a very creative and spiritual person, but you have the intelligence and the experience to be able to take either approach, which is what makes it really interesting. That's why I asked the question, because I know you're doing it from your heart and not thinking about it, like you said, Mackenzieing the fuck out of it, like exactly that, right? Which you could if you wanted to.
Right.
So that's what's so like honest about, the way that you created it.
And of course I kicked the tires.
Yeah.
Right. Or like, I also saw what, like, the McKinsey part of the brain comes out. They're getting a lot of, we'll have to send them an invoice after this.
Yeah.
But that part of the brain, of course, is there too, and saying, oh, wow, this is a massive opportunity. This landscape actually, I bet if you asked a bunch of VCs or, people in the space, they would even describe it as crowded, or that, oh, there's so many meditation apps in the app store, or there's so many wellness companies, or
Totally.
There's so much fitness studios, right? Oh, it's so. And for me, I think, and this is maybe sitting in the kind of more macro trend insight, I saw that this wasn't this thing. All of these were very narrow conversations that were laddering up to a broader conversation, and no one at the time, frankly, let me just say it point blank, with a little bit of ego, and no one at the time was having that conversation.
Yeah.
And so that to me was the 100-foot wave.
It's interesting too, because I think, to your point, like, there are things out there, but nothing that you were doing existed. No. And from that standpoint, it seems early,
Exactly. Like I that's exactly how I was describing it. And especially with modalities like breathwork was genuinely nascent. And again, it feels silly to call anything related to it as a trend, because it also has been around for thousands of years, or as early as your breath, if you want to include awareness. So like, it's silly to say it's something that is trending. It feels silly to say it, even though it is. But at the time when we rented space in Dubois Triangle in San Francisco, and we were running these classes, I can assure you it was not a popular thing, and even those who were aware of it did not at all have dreams of taking it mainstream, because especially some of those experiences that, like, in kind of the longer format breath and sound experience, they're bigger experiences, they're transformational in nature, and so it just wasn't something that people were thinking was able to be popularized or able to be brought to the mainstream. But again, those are in the narrows of the techniques and the modalities that they all work, and they all deserve their shine in the light, and whoever's working on any piece of them, it's incredible, and they're on my team. And this, I think, that, again, to just speak to what the broader opportunity was, now there's brands, especially bigger brands, or you can see their brand positioning kind of catching up to this. Fitness companies are starting to talk about life and how it's not just about this or that. And so
it's funny, because oftentimes when I'm having a conversation about fitness or boutique fitness, people will say, well, no, wellness, like, fitness, like, it's like now everybody's like imposing wellness on, like, you're not just working out, you have to take care of your brain. Like, that's what it's really becoming. Because I also don't think that there's not that many exciting fitness concepts out there. So it's like, there's a lot more wellness concepts, at least it seems like right now, than there are just straight fitness.
People are hungry, as we move our way up Maslow's pyramid, and it's with acute awareness of, the spectrum of on a global stage of where people sit on that. But, if we're just to narrow the conversation to the US, a generally wealthy nation, we have people that have a lot of their basic needs met. It's only natural to move up the pyramid, and people are hungry for ways to improve themselves. People are hungry for ways to have a better relationship with their life and their life experiences. People, we have information age has thrusted us into a state of intellectualizing our human experience, and laggard are the tools to be able to actually grapple with it. And that's what we, are working on, and a lot of the people that you mentioned in the landscape are also working on.
I think it's interesting too, because the timing, I think your timing is almost perfect, if that's
I
such a
hope so.
thing. Yeah, well, because, again, like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, people wouldn't openly say that they even deal with anxiety. Like people
Right.
were not comfortable with the vulnerability around that. And I feel like the pandemic really accelerated like the conversation around mental health and lifestyle and all the things where people had to like think long and hard, like, do I really want to continue living this way, and looking for tools to help them maybe cope with everyday stress, and decide again how they want to live, and it's become way more widely accepted and okay to say, what, I struggle, like I need to do certain things to feel good, and this is one of them.
I'm so glad you said that. Thank you for actually zooming us out, because it's easy to forget. This is one of those things that I think about here and there. Is I miss being naive to the space. Again, I wasn't in this the industry of this work
Yeah,
until a few years ago, and I miss those fresh set of eyes that realize those things. I spend so much of my day with people that are so in the culture of this and
of
so
course.
openly, but you're so right. And that was, that was one of the gifts of that experience that we had collectively, as it was this giant control variable that took us from this momentum of everything that was happening faster, bigger, this, and it just, and gave us all that observational perspective. And okay, what are we actually sitting with? And I think it really elucidated a lot for a lot of people. I know for me personally, my relationship with my social life, my, some core relationships I had I mean, there was so much turnover. So no, there was a grand reset. And I do think we're prime. I think that there's a readiness and there's an open-mindedness to these things. And I hope that we do a great job on the side, the folks that are providing these services and these spaces and these experiences. I hope that we continue to up the ante on the empathy for our customers, our consumers, our users, um, by being really careful about the language we use and how we market these things, so that they don't alienate people, and everyone feels welcome. And these practices have a way of feeling intimidating. These spaces have a way of feeling intimidating. And so the North Star shouldn't be some egoic pursuit of being the best of every this, and brand everything in a way so that it's different and better and best, but more to make it just simple. And I kind of weirdly fantasize that if somebody liked an experience at Open, that they would be able to go to somewhere else and look at their menu and find a similar thing. If that makes sense, like
Sure.
that ubiquity that I spoke to early on. You know, it's easy to villainize massively scaled brands and systems, and say, oh, McDonald's is not healthy for you, or Burger King is not healthy for you, or this fast food is. But there's something to learn. And at the end of the day, the user can go to one joint and order a cheeseburger, and go to another place and order a cheeseburger, and they'll be
Yeah.
really reliably delicious, and you know what you're going to get. And that's what we need to do with these practices.
Yeah.
People need to be as familiar and with breath work, for example, as a cheeseburger, and They know exactly how they want it, how they like it, with ketchup or with cheese, and hold the onions. And I like the 30-minute format versus the 60-minute format, or I like the
Yeah.
everyday stuff. And today people don't have that vocabulary yet.
Yeah, which is why I think it is still early, regardless of the fact that it's been around a very long time. It's only really starting to gain, awareness in the States. And
Yep.
so you after the events that you're putting on, where do you go? Like, how does the app get created? And then when you start thinking about the physical space?
Right. Yeah. So even before we were putting on those pop-ups, as I mentioned, Pete came on pretty early, and he was our CTO. So knew we wanted to develop a brand, and that brand we knew wanted to communicate itself both on and offline. And so on the other side of all those experiences, and we felt like we had really developed a perspective on the content itself, we went and raised some institutional capital and described this vision of this brand that we wanted to create, and got just amazing partners on board that saw that vision and kind of stand by that vision to this date, and which was not a popular play to go pitch physical brick and mortar locations alongside building out an app ecosystem, and then eventually retreats and things like that. But that's the magic of the heyday and the magic of that ecosystem, and that I'm so excited to be a part of. Builders, innovators, technologists that are kind of creating our future. So so we're very fortunate to have great partners, and we were off to the races, and we started looking for physical locations. You're going to smile at this, Jay. We were looking at physical locations in January of 2020 and recruiting engineers at the same time. And we planned God Laughs. And so, and we were looking for locations in San Francisco. So that's where the first location would have ended up being. But
how did you transition that to Venice?
It was summer of that year. I'd gotten out of a long relationship, and I'd at this point been in San Francisco for 6 or 7 years, and I'd moved around a lot with PepsiCo in particular. So 6-7 years felt like a lifetime, and
it was time.
It was time, basically. And I wanted to move down to LA, and I was like, oh man, like I wish we could move the company down to LA. And then I remembered that I was the CEO and that I could make that decision. And so
you're like, I should tell somebody. I should put a request in.
But there was something about the company. I did justify it on paper too, which was two things. One, we had just started to recruit teachers. We had relationships in working with teachers before that, but we were about to bring on full-time teachers, and we were having a global conversation around it. And people talking to people in New York, talking to people in Australia and Canada, and we were making the hard pitch to move to San Francisco. And that wasn't, the early innings to those conversations were not going well. And then I started to reveal kind of my forward thinking, and hey, what if it was LA? And everyone's like, yeah, I would move to LA. So just that teacher recruitment thing at the time, that was an element of it. And the other element was for the app. And generally, we knew that it was really important, given how we work and how we develop product, that we needed a really creatively driven organization, and creative production and creative talent down in LA is very different and abundant in LA. So those are kind of the two business reasons that we justified it. But now looking back, like I couldn't imagine how it could not have been. The first location had been born in LA, and so we worked on the app for about a year before we had like a web app out there during COVID, so to be of service. But our iOS app then launched a year after, and we were in LA at that point. And, we're running pop-ups on and off as we could until we launched our first location in Venice Beach.
Which couldn't be more perfect.
It's pretty cool.
It's very cool. Seeing a lot of spaces and rarely being taken back by the beauty of a physical space. It's beyond beautiful.
Thank you, Jay. It means a ton more coming from you. I remember when you first visited, I was eager to get yours and Doug's feedback. But we're lucky. We got to dream about how it could look rather than have to justify its existence right away.
Sure.
I think that's the buffer that we were seeking when we said we had this kind of grand ambition for what we wanted to build. And building technology, building an app from scratch in-house to be able to kind of direct features and design the way that you want to. It's very expensive. Doing a location that people could feel like they could both sweat in as well as have a kind of conscious shifting experience and maybe even come into contact with their spirituality.
Sure.
And have that happen in the same space. That's kind of an expensive endeavor as well. So all of those things are just almost logistics to enable what it is that we're really trying to do here. And we're talking right now, it's November 2023, and I'm very excited to see that people are responding to it and feeling a ton of urgency to get more locations out there and have more people on the app and far more things to come.
A lot of exciting things to come. Before we jump, there's also a hot and cold component in the studio. And how did that come about? What were your thoughts there about bringing that? It wasn't really, I don't think, it's become ridiculously popular everywhere you could turn, but you did it really before that. Where did that idea come?
Yeah, just, again, bottoms up. So starting from a place of just shit I love, and I love a hot. I like a cold. I like an ocean plunge. Let's put it that way. And then people started getting in baths. I'm like, okay, I guess that that does it too. And the studio, as you know, is not so accidentally located right next to the beach for that reason. So love an ocean plunge and love a sauna. Just love the heat in general. LA is too cold for me. Let's put it that way. But from a content perspective and what we stand by at Open, and the themes of presence and connection, themes of longevity, themes of mind and body modalities that get you into certain states, then hot and cold both. We don't need to go through the scientific literature here.
No.
A lot of our compatriots are doing that for us, and so it just felt like it's something I loved, and it's something that people were more and more aware of the health benefits of it. And so again, to hit on that trend note, I think this is what's exciting about kind of the health influencers that are having rise now, is that we're taking things that felt confusing. I think people were thinking, oh, our sauna is even good for me, or there was a lot of misinformation and confusion out there, and now we know that these things have tangible downstream impacts on your health today and tomorrow. And so the way we see it is it's a kind of ancillary thing that supports what we do in the practice space. And it's something that people want and might not have space for in their own home, and it's something that fits really well with our program. So that's kind of how I found it.
It's great too, because I even myself, like, I pay attention to the health benefits for sure, but it just, like, when I get into a conversation about cold plunging or contrast and things of that nature, the reality is it just makes me feel good. So Like I happen to feel really good when I get out of really cold water, like
Right.
I feel great, right?
Right.
Whether or not I'm going to live a few extra years as a result of it, like amazing if that's the case, but it just makes me feel good,
Yeah.
you know?
That's something, isn't it? Yeah, I
I
think.
think it's everything, man. Like, I have a birthday coming up at the end of the week, and it's
Yeah.
like, every year that goes by, I realize that the purpose of being here is to have some sort of an impact on this place, right? Like hopefully it's a little bit different because you're here, than it would be if you weren't. And I feel that way, and I think everybody should look at life that way. So they're not just so focused on themselves, right?
Yep.
Like what could we do collectively to make other people feel better, right?
Yeah.
And like that's pretty cool, and that's why I really enjoy spending time with you. I think it's
Likewise,
yeah,
brother.
yeah, no, for sure. And there's a lot of, I feel blessed to be working with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Yes, sir.
And so before we jump, I believe we also have a promotion for folks, which when the episode comes out, we'll put in there. But where can everybody find more information on Open?
Yep, you can find us in the App Store. You can look under Open and add mindfulness or breath work or meditation, any of those terms, and you'll be able to find us there. Check us out on Instagram, on our website.
And in person?
And in
What's
person
the address?
at 57 Market Street in Venice, 9. Come see us. We cannot wait to host you.
And I highly suggest that you do just that, because there is no other place like it. And Raed, I really appreciate you, man. Thank you for joining us today. Wonderful discussion as always.
Likewise. Thank you for reminding us to live better.
Thank you, brother.